on the wrong scene there for a second. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Toyzilla Streams Book Club. Notice the new layout. Well, it's old for those of y'all who still been in book club. So earlier tonight, we did a lot of Crash Bandicoot. Had a few technical difficulties, but we figured them out because we smart like that. So we're going to reward ourselves with 3 more chapters of The Looking Glass Wars. Last time we ended on chapter 15. Well, 13, 14, and 15. If you haven't seen the previous chapters, you can find them on YouTube. Just search for the Toyzilla Bearbot symbol, and you can catch up on your own time. So tonight we're going to go ahead and get started. Because again, y'all special requested that y'all wanted to read again. Y'all don't know how much that made me happy and how that made me feel inside. So I'm glad to start back up again. Thank y'all. Y'all really making me feel comfortable. So go ahead and get comfy. We first to get our story on. And then, if y'all want to end y'all night, go to bed because you got your story. Or, play some other games. Y'all do that too. But right now, let's get back into this and see what happened to Alice and the Hatter. Oh, yeah. All right. Here we go. Let's just jump right into it. And if I pronounce words incorrectly, or if I go back to read some sentences because we stumbled, just know that's a part of the charm. Y'all let me know how to pronounce stuff later. Be nice about it, though, remember. I have feelings, too. All right, let's go. Alice thought Quigley Gaffer the nicest in the band of homeless orphans and runaways of which he was a part. And not just because he was so attentive to her, he was attentive to everybody. He was the least sullen, the least prone to depression, the one who, with his lively, confident attitude, kept everyone's spirits up when there weren't enough crust to go around, when it was cold and wet and they'd been chased out too many sheltered doorways to count. In other words, Quigley Gaffer gave them hope when life seemed particularly hopeless, and he had suffered as much as anybody. Walking alongside Alice that first day in London, he said, "So, princess, tell us about yourself." And she voiced her woeful condition with a viciousness that surprised her. "I saw my father, the king of Wonderland, murdered. My mother, the queen, is dead. Both of them were killed by my aunt, but it wouldn't matter even if they were alive because I'll never make it home. I saw my folks murdered, same as you," said Quigley. "We were driving along in our coach when a couple of thieves decided they didn't like the look of us and killed my father with a club to the head. I watched my mother get beaten to death with that self-same club, all the while begging for mercy. And I would have been greeted with the club too if I hadn't run into the dark and hidden while the thieves were trying to take the rings off mother's fingers. So I suppose you and me have something in common, well, with our parents being dead, right enough. I feel like they should have an English accent. Should I give them an English accent? I'm going to give them an English accent." Alice could think of other things she would have rather had in common with them. She didn't know it, and this certainly wasn't how Bidwit Hart would have taught her. But in the person of Quigley Gaffer, Alice was learning something that would one day serve her well as a queen. Lesson number 1B in Bidwit's carefully planned curriculum. For most of the universe's inhabitants, life is not all gummy wads and tarty tarts. It is a struggle against hardship, unfairness, corruption, abuse, and adversity in all its guises. Where even to survive, let alone survive with dignity, is heroic. To soldier through the days in the wake of failure is a courageous act of many. To rule benevolently, a queen should be able to center into the feelings of those less fortunate than herself. Never mind that dress. I knew from your gab that you ain't from anywhere around here, Quigley said. You don't have any accent I recognize. I don't know just what it is. It's Wonderlandian, I suppose. I don't feel like I'm good at accents. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop trying. Right, right. You're from Wonderland, you say. Quickly laughed. Why don't you tell us about the pals, princess? So she did, and the more she talked, the more she felt the cold, impersonal tone she had used to describe her parents' deaths fall away till she was almost overcome with sadness and longing for what so quickly and suddenly, so unexpectedly, had become part of her past. She was sure the Inventors Parade wouldn't seem so boring to her right now if she could only get back to the royal balcony to watch it. You see that light? She said, pointing at one of the gas lamps lighting the street. That was invented in Wonderland. But instead of an open flame, it had a glass bulb inside, and you only had to flick a switch to turn it on. She described Heart Palace, the singing flowers in the royal gardens, and the crystal continuum. And I don't mean to brag, she said, but I have a powerful imagination. I'll say. You think I'm making everything up? Quigley didn't answer. Alice saw a lone dandelion poking out of some mud. She stared hard at the flower and imagined it singing. It seemed to require more effort than it would have done in Wonderland, and it took longer. But then the dandelion's petals moved, and from the bud at its center came a thin little voice. La 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 la. That was all Alice could manage, but Quigley was impressed. He'd heard about magicians who could throw their voices, making it sound as if a person or object across the room were talking when it would be the magician himself standing right next to you. Nice trick. It's not a trick. And then, sadly, just remembering the exiled princess added, it's my birthday. Well, happy birthday, ma'am. Alice felt her eyes water, sorrow weighing her down. Ah, no crying on birthdays, Quigley said. You ought to meet some of my friends. They'll cheer you right up. So they walked to a blind alley in the shadow of London Bridge, where a ragtag group of children ranging in age from 5 to 12 lounged around on old crates. Hear ye, Quigley announced. I bring a newcomer into our ranks. The children looked at Alice, uninterested. They had seen newcomers before. Fact was, the makeup of the group was always changing. Some boy or girl entering into it one day, sharing their bread for weeks or months, and then going off, never to be seen again. No one ever knowing if they'd been arrested for stealing, stuck in a home, murdered, or what. Quigley introduced everyone to Alice. The big one's Charlie Turnbull. The one next to him with the mole on his nose is Andrew McLean. He's an orphan too. That one there is Otis Oglethorpe, a runaway, but his mother's dead. And in the ladies, we've got Francine Forge, Esther Wilkes, and Margaret Blemon, all of them orphans. Everyone, may I present you with Princess Alice of Wonderland. She's come to us through a puddle of water, and I suggest you be on your best behavior in front of royalty. Puddle of water? Charlie Turnbull guaffed. Princess of Wonderland? Quigley didn't bother to explain. He dug in a heap of what looked like rags and held up a pair of trousers, a blouse, and a man's coat for Alice's approval. These should fit you right enough. What was she supposed to change out of her wet things? Sorry, princess, said Quigley. No private rooms for you here in the alleys of London. She stripped, trying to act as if taking off her clothes in front of everybody wasn't unusual. The blouse fitted well enough, but the trousers and coat were too large. She added her birthday dress to the pile of clothes and blankets for anyone who might want it once it was dry. She slipped her feet into a pair of boots Quigley had rummaged up for her, discarding her Wonderland birthday shoes. Righty right, let's see what we've got, Quigley said to the others. They pulled various coins and foodstuffs out of their pockets, a few pence, a mostly empty wallet, cheese, sausages, a chicken leg. Otis Ogleton produced a loaf of bread he'd been hiding under his coat, and Charlie Turnbull brought out half a meat pie from under his hat. What about you? Otis asked quickly. What do you brought? I brought the princess, right enough. We can't eat her, said Charlie Turnbull. And that's another mouth eating what could have been going into our bellies. Mm. I'll make it up tomorrow. When me and the princess will bring plenty of all you, don't worry. Charlie glared at Alice. Meeting Quigley's friends wasn't in the least cheering. The food was divided evenly into 8 portions. The cheese and sausage did not taste like their counterparts in Wonderland. The cheese somehow soggy, the sausage flavorless. The meat pie, Alice thought, tasted like a stuffed old stocking. After eating, Andrew, Francine, and Margaret, the youngest of the orphans, crowded together on the clothes heap and snuggled down to sleep. Charlie made a bed for himself by pushing 3 crates together and covering them with an old quilt. Otis simply went to bed on the hard ground, using his coat as a blanket. Esther Wilkes dozed off sitting up, leaning back against the wall, her legs sticking out straight in front of her into the alley. Alice couldn't sleep. She tried counting Gwinoks. 1 Gwinook, 2 Gwinook, 3 Gwinook. It didn't help. Restless princess, Quigley asked, and offered to keep her company for a bit. We scatter about during the day, he explained, to beg, borrow, steal, as the case may be. Francine, Andrew, and Margaret work as a team. 2 of them get a bloke's attention while the third picks his pockets. Some days one of another of us will make the rounds of the shops looking for stale food they might want to throw away. But every night we meet here and share what we've got. I don't know if it's easier on us to make our way together, and Charlie doesn't always give up everything he gets in a day. He doesn't know I know, so don't tell him. But it feels better to most of them to be in a group. It can get lonely, with no proper family. I'm sure it can, said Alice. Well now, Quigley curled up on the ground, using his hands as a pillow. Gotta get some sleep. I made a promise to the others, and tomorrow's gonna be something big, I can tell you. I got plans for us, you and me. Good night, princess. Good night, Quigley Gaffer. It wasn't long before Alice was alone with the steady, rhythmic breathing of the slumbering street urchins. Francine mumbled in her sleep and buried her face in the crook of Andrew's arm. Charlie started to snore. Alice turned her face to the sky, to the limitless expanse that, ever since she could remember, had served as a reminder of the wondrous possibilities open to her. 4 Gwinook, 5 Gwinook, 6. Now starless and close, the sky just seemed empty. 7 Gwinook, 8 Gwinook, 9 Gwinook, 10. The last to fall asleep, Alice was the last to wake, still rubbing the crust from her eyes when Quigley presented her with a white flower whose roots were tangled in a mud ball he cupped in his hands. You think you can do that trick again? It took her a second to understand. The singing flower. It's not a trick. Yeah, but you think you can do it again? I don't know, I suppose. Do it. It took longer than it did the previous day, required even more effort and concentration, but at last the flower chirped into song. Yee-ho! Quigley celebrated, prancing around the alley. Where are the others? Alice asked. Already going about their daily business, princess, and it's time we went about ours. He chose the Benny corner. He chose a busy corner. All Alice had to do, he said, was sit on an upturned crate and make the flower sing when he gave her the wink. What's this, ladies and gents? He cried, raising his voice to the Londoners hurrying past. Why, the world's only singing flower. That's what it is. The last of the flower here has come all the way from Africa with as rare a flower as you ever saw. Oh, it looks like any common flower, I'll grant you that. But it's by no means common, I tell you. It sings. Who's for a bit of singing? Come on now. When enough curious people had gathered to watch, Quigley gave Alice the wink and she made the flower sing. It wasn't for more than a few bars, but it was enough. The crowd thought it a wonderful feat of magic. Quigley made the rounds of the audience, convincing each and every person to drop a few pennies into his hats. Spare a few, ladies and gents, for it's not everyone that's witnessed the amazing singing flower from Africa. Come now, the passage from Africa ain't cheap. Alice managed 4 more performances, one every hour, each draining her more than the last. She had to stop for the day, but by then they had earned more money than Quigley had ever seen in one place. They headed back to the alley to meet up with the others, who emptied their pockets. A tinkling of pennies, a broken watch, cheese, a salami, a few boiled potatoes. "And what have you two brought us?" Charlie asked. "Not much, I'd say," said Quigley, dumping the coins from his pockets. The others couldn't believe it. Where had Quigley and Alice gotten so much money? Quigley wouldn't say. He wanted to keep Alice's talent to himself. "But tomorrow will bring us the same," he said. "Me and the princess got us a workable scheme now. That's all that you need to know. Charlie, Otis, you come with me. Let's buy a feast we won't soon forget. Who wants what now?" When the others had gone to bed, Alice told Quigley that they didn't have to stand on a street corner all day to earn money. "I'll imagine however much we need," she said. "I'll be happy to spend tomorrow. I'll be happy to spend whatever money you come by, princess, no matter how you come by it." So Alice tried to imagine a pile of the different coins she'd seen that day. She tried to imagine them weighing down the pockets of her coat. But she was still fatigued from her exertions with the flower, and before she could bring a single coin into existence, Quigley started laughing at her. "Your face," he said. He tried to imitate her expression. Her face scrunched into dogged effort. Alice wasn't amused. "Never mind then," she said. "I'm not imagining a pile of money for you ever." "Aw, princess, come on now. I wasn't teasing you. We all look funny sometimes. Some of us look funny all the time. You go ahead and imagine what you will." But Quigley couldn't stop himself from laughing. So Alice didn't attempt to imagine a pile of money again that night or any night thereafter. We'll do things the hard way, since that's how he wants it." They spent their days on street corners, she making the flower sing while he collected money from the audience. But every new day seemed to weaken her ability with the flower, and her performances became less frequent. The more time Alice spent in this wet, dreary city, the less she believed in her imagination. "It's not as strong as Mother thought. Probably never was." At least twice a day, between flower performances, she tried to imagine Hattie's whereabouts. Inevitably, she saw nothing. Imagination's eye? She hadn't had enough training. Eventually, she had the strength and will to bring out about only one flower performance a day, so Quigley made sure it'd be when they could attract the largest audience, at dusk. The streets especially crowded with people on their way home from work. Every night, after the meals afforded by Alice's performances, Andrew, Margaret, and Francine would ask her to tell them about Wonderland. "Please, please, please," they'd say, imagining themselves in the bright crystal world Alice described, with heart palaces, walrus butlers, frog messengers, and giant pipe-smoking caterpillars. They were able to escape for a short while from the poverty and squalor and daily scrounging of their own lives. Otis, Quigley, and Esther didn't enter into Alice's tales of Wonderland as fully as the younger orphans, but they enjoyed her stories enough to listen to them in wistful silence. Charlie Turnbull, on the other hand, made it clear he didn't believe a word she said. Mm-hmm. "Nothing but bleeding nonsense," he'd say. She told Andrew, Francine, and Margaret all about Hatter Madigan and how awful it was to have lost her bodyguard because he was so accomplished at fighting. If she'd had the milliner by her side, she said, she would never have met Quigley or any of them. To show what a man like Hatter could do, she described the injured card soldiers wreathing on the floor of Hart Palace, hands pressed against their wounds and blood pulsing out between worrying fingers. "Do you really know a man who can fight so many people?" Margaret asked. I do. It's a lie, said Charlie. But it's Dodge Anders who's going to be the greatest guardsman Wonderland's ever had, Alice went on. He's handsome and brave and kind and intelligent. He'll grow up to be almost as good a fighter as Hatter. I help him practice his swordsman's drills sometimes. I hold shields with different colors on them, and when I call out a color, he has to jab his sword at it while I shake and move the shield and make it as hard as I can for him. He's my best friend and... No, I mean, was. With a look around the alley. He was my best friend. Go on, Alice, Andrew said after she'd been silent for a time. No, said Alice, her voice hushed. I don't want to talk about Wonderland anymore. Oh. Then came the day her imagination failed altogether. It was dusk, the usual time when Quigley Evans, the showman, rounded up a crowd of Londoners, curious to see the singing African flower. Quigley gave Alice the wink, and she envisioned the flower petals opening and closing like lips, the bud gathering its voice and singing a few bars, a lullaby maybe, or... But nothing happened. She strained, groaned. Some of the onlookers thought she was going to be sick. Sing, flower! Seconds passed, a full minute. Alice began to sweat through her dirty, ragged clothes. Sing, flower, sing! With grumblings and curses, the crowd started to disperse. She needs encouragement is all, Quigley cried. You pinning his hat and begging for money, 2 pennies apiece, and I guarantee that African flowers sing like you never heard. No one threw money into the hat. One gentleman threatened to call for a policeman. That was all Quigley had to hear. He grabbed Alice's hand and they ran off, leaving the flower and crate behind. I'm sorry, Alice said, once they were safe and had stopped to catch their breath. What happened? I don't know, she said. It scared her. It was like losing her hearing or her sight. Maybe the longer I'm away from Wonderland, maybe the less my imagination works. Quigley said, unbelieving. I'm sorry, Quigley. I'm sorry too, Princess. It was the first time she'd ever seen him angry. She had failed him. She had failed Francine, Margaret, Andrew, Esther, Otis, and Charlie. She had never before failed anyone who was counting on her, and she didn't like the way it made her feel. In silence, she and Quigley walked back to the alley to meet up with the other orphans. Along the way, they stopped in at the Kettle of Fish and the Grizzled Seaman pubs, hoping for a little charity. All they got was a bag of crusts. We was thinking of having duck tonight, Andrew said, running up to her as she and Quigley turned into the alley. With orange sauce and stuffing. Me and Francine and Margaret and Otis never had duck before. Having reached the end of the alley, Quigley flashed Alice a look, summoned a light-hearted tone, and declared duck to be perfectly awful. You ain't missing much, I can tell you that. It ain't a coincidence duck rhymes with yuck. But I suppose this is as good a time as any to tell you. Looks like we're back to the old ways for a time, each of us having to get what we can get during the day and bringing it here to share. What are you saying? Charlie asked. By way of answer, Quigley turned out his empty pockets, pale linen tongues of poverty. So what we got? I got nothing, Charlie said. What I stole I ate for breakfast. I ain't got nothing else because I thought we'd eat just like we've been doing. It was the same with the others. Well, at least we have these crusts, Alice said. A hearty food if ever there was one, replied Quigley, trying not to sound too disheartened. He divided the crust into 8 portions, claiming he was full before he finished eating his share, but Alice could see that his bright, cheerful manner was forced, even a little sarcastic. She stayed awake after the others had gone to bed. I have to think of something. Why can't I make the flowers sing? Because my imagination was nothing special after all. That's why. So think of something. I will. I will. I will. I will. I will. I know how we can get as much food as we're used to having, she told Quigley in the morning. But we need Charlie, Otis, and Esther to help. Whatever you say, Princess. He wasn't very enthusiastic. Didn't seem as though he much wanted to talk to her. He'll be happy afterwards, once our stomachs are full. She dressed in the finest coat she could dig out of the alley's heap of clothes and blankets, and she used her own saliva to wash the dirt from her face and hands. With the stub of a pencil, she wrote out a list of meats on a small square of paper. Then she led the others to a butcher shop that she and Quigley had often passed. Stay hidden behind the carriage here and wait for my signal, she told them, and entered the shop. And what can I do for you today, young lady? The butcher was a large, beefy man with a ruddy face. He wore a blood-stained apron. I'm supposed to get these for my mother, she handed him the list of meats. Seems like a lot for you to carry. Our carriage is outside, but the driver is off on another errand. She gave him her biggest smile, and he couldn't help but believe her. Mere circumstances could not disguise the warm look of a princess. Let's see. It says here, 1 8-pound rump joint. He walked through an opening into the back of the shop, and she waved very quickly on the others to hurry inside. They grabbed the chickens hanging in the window, the sausages and hams, Alice helping load them up with their arms were too full to reach for more. Hey! The butcher dropped the joint and scrambled from behind the counter. The orphans bolted out of the shop, scattering into different directions. There you are! A passing Bobby caught Alice by the collar of her coat. She slipped out of it, her dirty street urchin's clothes visible for all to see, but she only got a few steps further before he caught her again. Let me go, she said, imagining a turtle bird flying in the man's face or biting a hand that held her, neither of which happened. Quigley had paused at the end of the street and was looking at her, a chicken under each arm, his pockets stuffed with sausages. Maybe he'd come to her rescue? Maybe he'd risk his own safety and do something clever to free her and they'd both get away? But no. He turned and sprinted around the corner, out of sight. Alice never found out if she was the only one of the orphans who'd been caught that day. She was. But even before she'd been roughly escorted to the Charing Cross Foundling Hospital, where she would live until she was adopted by the Littles, and even before she realized that she would never see Quigley Gaffer again, she had started to think that maybe it wasn't worthwhile getting attached to people. All they ever did was betray you. They betrayed you by leaving. Alice tried not to hear when a warden at Charing Cross opened the door to a large room with cots lined up in 2 rows against the walls, children screaming and yelling and fighting, and said, "Welcome to your new home." Poor Alice, that's messed up. They got all that meat, they couldn't come back to help her just for a little bit? That's messed up. Chapter 17. Man, chapter 16 was long, wasn't it? Oh my goodness. Chapter 17. Followed by an angry mob, the Frenchmen brought their prisoner to the court of first instance and the Palais de Justice. People pushed and shoved one another, trying to get a better view of the proceedings. The air in the room quickly became hot and stale from so many bodies packed into such a modest enclosure. The men placed the rug upright in the middle of the court before the magistrate. A chuckle passed among the prosecutors, advocates, and court reporters. "Quelle est ceci?" asked the magistrate, not amused. I'm sorry, y'all, I do not know French. If that was not the correct pronunciation, y'all can help me out? Thanks a ton. The public prosecutor, a gowned and whiskered gentleman, stood up and said a number of things in French, which, muffled through the unintelligible words, were Hatter could hear from within the confines of the rug. est le prisonnier? The magistrate asked. The public prosecutor pointed to the rug. Again, the court regulars laughed. With a heavy sigh, the magistrate warned the gentleman not to make a mockery of the court. The prosecutor apologized and explained that he had no intention of doing any such thing, but that the prisoner was très dangereux. I think that's trying to be dangerous. I don't know. And the carpet, the only means that had been found to subdue him. A man stepped forward and declared that the prisoner possessed violent, otherworldly powers. The gallery of onlookers, none of whom had witnessed the fight on the Rue de Rivoli. The gallery of onlookers, none of whom had witnessed the fight on the Rue de Rivoli, came alive with loud assertions of "C'est vrai? C'est vrai?" Again, if y'all know what that is, please help me. Please, please say something. What did they say? The magistrate, however, had seen quite the parade of motley life from his perch in court, and merely wondered if he might not treat himself to a little fried mutton along with his usual wedge of brie and bottle of Bordeaux at his favorite cafe, Le Chien des Pépetiques. There's so many French words in here. Je voudrais voir les prisonniers, he said. The prosecutor cleared his throat several times and said that, with all due respect, he did not think releasing Hatter from the rug was a good idea. The magistrate huffed and ordered the prosecutor to remove Hatter from the rug, or he would find himself in prison for contempt of court. The rug was laid on the floor. The gallery of onlookers surged, people squeezing forward, sensing that something dramatic was about to happen. They were not mistaken. No sooner was Hatter unrolled from his confinement than he jumped up and blink! His wrist blades sliced the air, blurry with speed. He grabbed a dagger from his backpack and threw it, skewering and painting on the wall next to the magistrate's head, an action that caused the wise man to hunker down beneath his bench for safety. Before the court police gathered the courage to attempt recapture, Hatter corkscrewed out the nearest window and landed on the sidewalk at a run. The onlookers crowded at the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious man. The magistrate peeked up over his bench to see if his life was still in danger. After surviving such a day, he decided a plate of fried mutton was well deserved. I'm so hungry right now. Y'all don't even know. We're going to eat some dinner after this. That's what we're going to do. Rumors began to spread about a man with spinning knives on his wrist who appeared out of puddles. With the passing months and after numerous sightings of Hatter had been reported but never officially proved, the rumors fossilized into legend. Civilians claimed that he could defeat an entire regiment on his own. Military men wondered aloud what more Napoleon might have accomplished if he'd had the man in his ranks. Young boys imagined themselves in his shoes, playing the part of a superhero. In drawing rooms, wealthy, educated ladies and gentlemen put aside their usually reserved manners and attempted to imitate his acrobatic spins and twirls, and even, on occasion, his somersaults. Maid servants all over France gathered in dim kitchens and told one another romantic stories about the legendary figure with whom they'd fallen in love. A woman must have broken his heart, they imagined, because surely no man would behave as he did for any reason but the suffering of unrequited love. Upon turning in for bed, these lovesick servants left candles burning in their windows, and had Hatter been able to fly over Paris in the middle of the night, he would have seen a sleeping city dotted with these flickering lights of longing, pinpricks of warmth in the cold dark illuminating the way to the women's hearts. But Hatter would have felt anything but deserving, for he was wrestling with an unfamiliar emotion. inadequacy. He had failed to keep his promise to Queen Genevieve. It really wasn't his fault. He didn't know that the things were going to happen to him that they did. He's a good guy, you guys. They just give him a bad rap. All right, our last chapter for the night. How many more pages we got? Yeah, that's a good amount. All right, we gonna continue. Chapter 18. Alice didn't get along with the other children living at the Foundling Hospital. Children who had seen their share of heartache and sorrow, as she had, but who were no less eager to lose themselves in games like jacks, hopscotch, and hide and seek. All so silly and immature. Thoughts of Red, about what might have become of Dodge, clouded Alice's head. She couldn't for the life of her muster up any enthusiasm for games. The wardens of Charing Cross took a special interest in her, and this only served to further alienate her from the rest of the orphans. Anyone could see that she was going to grow into a beautiful woman. It was thought that her beauty might gain her entry into ranks of society rarely attained by orphans, which could bode well for Charing Cross, leading to donations from wealthy families on the hunt for unearthly beauties of their own. Whenever Alice mentioned Wonderland, she was shushed more harshly than she would have been if the wardens hadn't taken an interest in her. That's all in your head, little miss, and no one will want a daughter who talks rubbish all the time. Unless you want to live here forever, you'll clear your mind of that ridiculous, fantastical stuff. Dr. Williford, the doctor on the staff at Charing Cross, listened patiently to Alice's ridiculous, fantastical stuff. I'm sure you've had to face things that no young girl should ever have to face, he said. But you cannot hide in fantasy, Alice. Accept what has happened to you and know that you are not alone in misfortune. Try to focus on the sights and sounds around you because they are reality. There is still a chance for you to lead a normal, fruitful life. She stopped confiding in Dr. Williford and spent her day staring out a window at a dirty, leaf-strewn courtyard, which was where one of the wardens found her on an afternoon that would, yet again, change everything. Alice, I'd like you to say hello to the Reverend and Mrs. Liddell. Alice turned from the greasy window to look at the couple. The woman with hard eyes and uneasy smile, the doughy man in overcoat and gloves. All strangers were the same to her. Strange, far removed, unable to reach her. Mm-mm. She is pretty, Mrs. Liddell said, but a haircut and a thorough scrubbing are in order, I think. Quite, said the Reverend. The Liddells lived in Oxford, where the Reverend was Dean of Christ Church College. Nothing happened, it seemed, that didn't bring with it an element of misfortune. No sooner had Alice left Charing Cross than she found herself in circumstances hardly more pleasing. Not another word! Mrs. Liddell scolded when Alice described the inventor's parade to her new siblings. Animals can't talk because they're dumb bees, she rebuked when Alice claimed otherwise. Flowers can't sing because they don't have larynxes, she insisted when Alice told of flowers with beautiful voices. Keep talking nonsense and I'll wash your mouth out with soap. I'm a princess and I'm waiting for Hattie to come and rescue me, Alice said. You'll see. Yeah, tell her, Alice. This Miss Liddell, I don't like her. Alice, if you want to amount to anything in society, Mrs. Liddell warned, or at the very least show appreciation for what we've done by welcoming you into our home, you'll stop embarrassing this family and live with your head firmly in this world and do as others do. As punishment, Mrs. Liddell would send Alice to her room where she had to stay 4 days, sometimes a whole week at a time. Meals would be brought to her. That suited her perfectly well. It meant she wouldn't have to see them. Wrong. Though she couldn't go out, her new sisters weren't forbidden from visiting. And second afternoon of one of her confinements, Edith and Lorena marched into the room and sat on Alice's bed, studying her. She tried to ignore them, working hard to remember every gemstone of Heart Palace, every turn of every heart-shaped passage. Numerous drawings of the palace were tacked to her walls. 14 steps leading from the lower courtyard into the ballroom, 17 bathrooms in total, and why don't you draw something else for a change? Lorena asked her. Because I don't want to forget where I came from. Better draw the orphanage then, Edith shrieked, and she and Lorena ran off laughing. That's messed up. Alice sat with pencil poised above her drawing. I shouldn't care what they think. I don't. But their mocking laughter had caused a twinge of what? Embarrassment? Shame? Princesses didn't like to be made fun of any more than ordinary people. Alice pushed the drawing away from her. It would remain forever unfinished. All right, girls, Miss Prickett, the Liddell's governess, announced. Seeing as this is Alice's first day at our lessons, let's wish her well and encourage her to work hard. Alice sat at the dining room table with Edith, Lorena, and Rhoda, paper and pencil neatly arrayed in front of her. A blackboard rested atop the sideboard. The words, "Welcome Alice Liddell," were written on it. That's not how you spell my name, Alice blurted. Miss Prickett looked at the blackboard, then at Alice. No? Perhaps you'll be kind enough to come up here and show me how to spell it. I'll let it pass this time, Alice, but in the future you are not to speak out. You raise your hand and wait to be called upon. Alice held her head high and stared straight as Alice held her head high and stared straight ahead as she walked to the sideboard. At the blackboard, she erased ICE from her name and wrote YSS in its place. Edith, Lorena, and Rhoda erupted with laughter. That is enough, scolded Mrs. Prickett. Alice, you will write your name 100 times on the blackboard. ALICE. Now begin. So she was stuck there in front of them while Miss Prickett began the lesson. Edith, Lorena, and Rhoda peeked around their books at her, threw one another giggling glances. Alice wanted their hair to fill with wormies, their eyes to seal shut, their laughing tongues to tie into knots. Nothing happened. Useless. White imagination or black, it doesn't matter because I can't conjure. She'd written Alice 99 times. Miss Prickett wasn't looking. She spelled out Alice, ALYSS, on the blackboard and started toward her seat. Miss Prickett turned to the board. Just a moment, please. I'm sure you think you're clever, Miss Liddell. But let's see what such cleverness gets you. Wipe the board and start again. Another 100 times. ALICE. Begin. Alice did as she was told, no longer wanting to stand on exhibition. Maybe now you'll remember how to spell your name correctly, Miss Prickett scolded when she finished. As she returned to her seat, Lorena whispered, Odd Alice, and the label stuck. It probably didn't help that whenever the children of the family friends thought they'd take a chance and chat with her, Alice filled the ears with talk of Wonderland. She must think she's better than all of us, calling herself a princess, the children huffed. Alice got into fights and traded insults with her tormentors, often returning home scraped, bruised, and humiliated. She tried to shut her ears to it all, but doubts began to plague her. Can everyone be wrong? She grew tired of persisting in her convictions against the Liddells, their friends, everyone. Is it really possible that every single person I meet is wrong and I'm right? A whole lot easier if I could just forget. Might she have imagined that she'd been a princess in another world? What if I dreamed it up while sick in bed? Then the simplest and yet most miraculous thing happened. She found a friendly ear, or rather two. They belonged to the Reverend Charles Ludwig Dodgson, the mathematics lecturer of Christ Church. He was a gentle, shrinking, violent type of fellow who lived at the college and sometimes came to the Liddells for tea. An amateur photographer, he took pictures of the girls. Alice posed for him in a corner of the garden, wearing a light-colored dress with flared sleeves, white socks, and patent leather shoes. She faced to the right of the camera and smirked at him, shy but proud, as if the two of them shared a secret. But it wasn't until a boating trip to Godstow that she told him about Wonderland. They had stopped for a rest, were lounging on the grass while Edith and Lorena played in the shallows of the river Isis, as that particular stretch of the Thames was called. Don't you want to join your sisters? The Reverend Dodgson asked. Alice no longer bothered explaining to people that she didn't have any sisters. No, she replied. Dodgson thought this a charming answer. But why not? After you've been a princess and had your queendom taken from you, as I have, it's hard to get excited about a mess of fish and weeds in a river. The Reverend Dodgson laughed. Alice, whatever are you talking about? Should I? Will he believe? He does seem different from the others. Should I? One last time? The restraint she'd been under gave way. Memories poured out of her as if they had to be spoken aloud and quickly to convince her of their truth or be forever forgotten. When she mentioned Dodge, Charles Ludwig Dodgson started to take notes. Dodgson. He was a boy. The Reverend was flattered to be a part of Alice's dream world. You have the most amazing imagination of anyone I've ever met, he told her. Alice knew better. She hadn't conjured anything in a long time. Let me see if I understand you correctly, Dodgson said. People can travel through looking glasses, enter through one and exit from another? Yes, I've tried it here, but none of the glasses work. She watched him jot something in his notebook. Are you really going to write a book about Wonderland, Mr. Dodgson? I think I might. It'll be our book, Alice, yours and mine. The book would prove that she was telling the truth. She would not give up on herself. Not yet. Ah, and that's the end of that chapter, everybody. Oh, and that's also the end of part 1 of the book. Part 2 is next. But we'll continue that tomorrow. We'll do about 2 or 3 chapters after we do Crash Bandicoot and maybe some Fall Guys if you guys are interested. I want to thank y'all for coming on again today and reading those books with me. Just to talk just for a little bit about it, I really feel bad that Alice is stuck in a world where everybody thinks she's lying about who she is and what she says. That is gaslighting at its finest. People making you doubt your own memories of what happened. Like, you don't know yourself what you've lived through. That's a horrible thing to do to people. Please don't ever make anyone else feel like they're inferior just because they have an imagination, even if you don't believe what they're saying. I mean, who are you to burst somebody's bubble? That ain't right. That's not right either. You don't know. It's fun. Let it be fun, just for a little bit. I don't know. But like always, my budding artiste, if you guys like what you heard this day, remember to come back next time for the next couple of chapters. And also, while you're listening along, if you make some fan art of the pages that we read together, I'm sure we'd love to see something. I don't know about you. I love reading chapter books and all, but sometimes we want to look at pictures too, right? Let's make some for the artist, for the author of the book. Maybe we can display them on the next stream. If y'all, you know, send them to me. Either comment them under the YouTube page or over here. Let me know when you have them. I'll tell you when to send them through. Only when y'all start giving me art though. We'll get to that block when we get to it. All right. But again, I'll see y'all next time. Oh, and just so y'all know, remember, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Friday is when we stream. 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come on down for some gaming. We're doing the 100% completion of Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy right now. We're on the third game. Yay us! Was there ever any doubt? Then we'll play some Fall Guys just to have fun. We need a W. We really do. I promise you that much. And then a couple chapters of book club because we all need to read a little bit. We all need to get back into using our imaginations, don't you think? Whether it be a white or black imagination, use it. So y'all remember our little saying that we like to do. If you like what you see, you turned on your PC and mute it. I'll see y'all next time, okay? Goodbye, everybody. Be safe during this whole pandemic nonsense. I love you all. Toyzilla is out.